Welcome to the Page Turnerz Podcast, where book lovers unite to celebrate the enchanting world of fiction. With your host, Paul A. Brooks. In each episode, we'll dive into the captivating realms of storytelling, exploring the pages that transport us to magical places and introduce us to unforgettable characters. In each episode, we'll embark on a creative expedition through the minds of seasoned and emerging writers to unravel the mysteries and unveil the passion that fuels their stories. Join us on this odyssey through the pages and pixels of imagination, where words become worlds and stories illuminate our lives. So, pour yourself a coffee and immerse yourself in discussions about writing, gripping plots, heroes and villains, and the sheer joy of escaping into a well-crafted story.
In today's episode, I'm talking to Beth Barany, writing coach, podcaster, and award-winning author. Now, this is the first time I've spoken to an author who writes in multiple genres, and it was great to find out exactly how she does it. Hi, Beth. Welcome to today's podcast. Thank you very much for coming on today. It's really nice to meet you. So where are you based in the world? Is it Pacific time?
Yes, I'm in Pacific time. Yeah, great to meet you too, Paul. I'm
you.
in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm specifically in Oakland, which is across the bay from San Francisco, right next to Berkeley. I went to UC Berkeley. Pretty much stayed in this area. Yeah.
Nice, fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you are the first writer that I've spoken to who writes in multiple genres, okay, which I find fascinating because that's something that I'm thinking about doing in a year or so. We've just kind of said earlier on that that's what I'm planning on doing. So it's something I'd like to do in the future. So can you tell us, what genres do you write in?
Yes. So I'm currently working in science fiction mystery.
Okay.
And before that, and I have been working in fantasy, young adult adventure fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have written 5 stories that are published so far in sweet paranormal romance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have
Very
another
different.
one. Yeah. And I have one in that particular series that's going to be a romantic suspense, paranormal romantic suspense. So I'm really in the science fiction fantasy world, umbrella, speculative fiction, as people call it.
Yeah.
And I just love it.
Yeah. I was going to say that it must be that when you're writing in different genres like that, but thinking about the difference between a romance genre, for example, and sci-fi, you must have, how can I put it, a different voice. You use different language between the two genres, would you say?
Yeah, I would. There's probably, I'm sure, if someone were to analyze, or we'll have an AI analyze all my writing, I'm sure there's okay, we can have another conversation about that sometime, but I don't think you need to be afraid of it. And anyway, yeah, I have opinions. When people read, say, okay, I came out first with my Henrietta The Dragon Slayer series.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I switched over to Janie, there is a definite difference. The characters are different. The characters' voices are different.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some author voice in there that is the same. And then when it came to the romance, you can see the similarities in the way I write my characters, and each of those had a different protagonist. Or, I was writing, I think, from 2 points of view, the love interests, and each of them, I tried to make their voices distinct. I would say that the interest overall of magic, or of supernatural, or of making up the rules of the world is what's similar.
Yeah.
But there probably is a voice difference because of those different genres. I haven't analyzed it and what's the through line? What's similar? I'm sure it's in there. Yeah.
That's funny though, isn't it? When you think about it, if you, I think sometimes as a writer, if you overanalyze things, do you think that do you find that sort of staunches the creative flow a little bit if you're thinking too analytical about it rather than just getting it down on the page? Would you agree?
I try not to. I think to be an effective writer, I have to sink into the emotional space.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the left brain part of me that is deciding what's the right word or what's the right phrasing.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of feedback. So I also get help. I don't have to make all these decisions myself, thank goodness. Yeah. So I try not to be analytical about it. In fact, I don't even have an English degree. I didn't study in the English department at university on purpose because I didn't want to overanalyze
Yeah.
writing. I
Yeah.
did rhetoric. Rhetoric was for a purpose. Rhetoric is about argument, and that
Mm.
suited me. And now language is serving a purpose. But yeah, I stayed away stayed away from analyzing, but yet I'm also an editor, so I do analyze, but I analyze from a functional standpoint.
Yeah.
I taught English to foreigners as one of my early teaching jobs, and that meant like, how do you help people use language in a way that allows them to communicate? So that's always been my focus. And when I do edit people's work, I'm not coming from an academic perspective. I'm coming from a, how will this land on the reader? Like,
Mm.
let's talk about the emotional aspect of the words you chose and the order in which you put them, and so it has a different. Yeah, I've never articulated that before, but it's very functional the way I see language. It's
Yeah.
a tool.
Yeah.
It's our toolkit.
Absolutely, because I think, you know,
Yeah.
if you said, like, you know, you didn't do an English degree, and neither did I, but equally, I think if you've done a creative writing degree or something like that, it could boil it down to an academic exercise rather than a creative story writing exercise. It's not really even an exercise, is it? It's just something that's in you that just has to come out. And
Yeah.
I don't think that there is an intellectual or even an educational system that can get that out of somebody. It's just in them. They just got to get it out. They do say that there's a story in everybody. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I mean, we're all telling stories all the time.
Yeah.
Now, that's how we go about our day.
Yeah.
Whether or not someone wants to write it in a novel format, that's a whole other ball of wax,
And I
Yeah.
think that's where the education comes in, doesn't it, really, in terms of how you would write a novel, you know, or the how you write a scene, how you write a chapter, and all of those sort of the inciting incident, and all of those sorts of things that you have to put in a novel for it to be readable, I suppose. Those are the sorts of
Yeah.
things that I think, if you've got a story in you that you want to get out, that's the sort of thing that you learn. And I'm assuming people can
Yeah.
come to you for that, presumably.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, I have a whole method that I teach. Plan your novel like a pro. Oh, my book's over there. Yeah, so I have a whole process, and I help people find their own method and
Yeah.
process as well. That's actually really key. And yeah, there are certain things that I had to learn to write effective fiction, and I had to learn through the school of hard knocks. I
Mm.
didn't go to school. I wrote manuscripts. I had people read them, poke at them, ask me questions. And then I had to decide, oh, yes, okay, I'm going to continue with the story, or no, I'm going to set this one aside and let it live over there in a box in my closet. Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
few of those.
So as
Mhm.
you write in then so many different genres, I'm assuming, as well as everything else that you do, you're kind of writing all the time. Is that true? Is it just
I
something that you
guess
just do?
I've created it like a very important date. Like, it's a very important appointment that I keep with
Okay.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I view it. And it depends on the phase I'm in. So right now I'm editing a novel, which I can talk to you about more, but it's like I'm making certain decisions and putting my attention on that. A few weeks ago, I needed to write some script, a few pages of script for my movie. I went to the cafe, and instead of working on the novel, I worked on the script. So like, I have a set time where I
Okay.
do that work, and I do it. And so I'm always writing in my journal. I'm always writing notes. I'm always talking to myself, so to speak. But the fiction itself kind of lives in one slot during the day.
Yeah. That's amazingly organized. Wow. I wish I was as good as that, really.
It makes me happy.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key. You've got to do what makes you happy. So, I mean, really,
Hmm.
how do you decide
Hmm.
genre you're going to write next? So let's say, for example, you've just finished a sci-fi.
Yeah.
Are you in that kind of sci-fi zone, or do you think, right, I need to step out of this now and write some romance? How do you decide what you're going to write
Mm.
next?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I've been at different big choice points. And when I decided to write my science fiction series, I was in one of those choice points.
Mm.
Am I going to write this paranormal romantic suspense? I had a whole novel. I could revise it. I could write more in that series. or shall I do this new sci-fi series? And it was really an emotional choice that I sat with it over a period of a few days. We were at a screenplay conference actually down in LA. So in this place of learning and just like inhaling all this new information, I let myself just dabble and think and like try on the idea. Should it be this? Should it be that? And so I'm working, it's very kinesthetic, it's very emotional. And then there were some opportunities to exercise an idea in the class with one of the presenters, and I tried on the science fiction idea. He's like, who's brave enough to do a log line for your movie? And so I did. I wrote a log line for the story using the formula they gave us, and I raised my hand and tested it out in a room full of strangers with the teacher giving me feedback. And the emotional response I got from sharing it and receiving the feedback, it was like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. This is where the excitement is. So it's like I don't know until I start to play with the idea and see what's rich, what's juicy, what's drawing me. And frankly, I mean, I'm going to be coming out with a book later this year, and it's going to be book 5 in the Janie series. So
okay, good.
So I'm very excited about that, and I'm already thinking about ideas for book 6, book 7, because this is meant to be an ongoing series. She's an investigator. Every book has a murder mystery or 2 or 3, depending. And she gets to travel around to different space stations and have adventures and have her team. And so I just foresee this series continuing. And while I'm working on that, I'm working on the movie, which is more stories about Henrietta and her friends. And I have a whole TV series in mind. So again, I'm thinking also episodic storytelling. So these two, they're juggling at the same time.
My goodness. Do you ever take a break?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. I try. I do. My wife and I, we go away to the Canary Islands every year. We're going in March. But so I thought, because I was in the middle of my first book was just about to come out last year, and I thought, I'll just do a little bit of work with me. So much to her annoyance, I packed the laptop and took it with me. But fortunately for her, when I switched it on, I couldn't see the screen because of the sun. So, and that's absolutely true. I couldn't see the screen, so I had to have the rest of the time off. So there you go.
Yeah.
So I was kind of had an enforced break, but it is nice to take a break. You think it kind of recharges the batteries and gets those creative juices flowing again.
For sure. Yeah. And pretty soon I'm handing my manuscript off to critique partners and beta readers, and I will have a break from book 5.
Yeah.
And in that interim, I'm hoping to, who knows, I'll probably be working on marketing for the movie and all the things, and just take a little break from that kind of work. And maybe because it makes me happy to be working on a creative idea. So during the break, I might be brainstorming a bunch of ideas for more books in the Janie series, and probably brainstorming more ideas, writing some script material, or I don't know, if I'm not doing that initial creative work, I get really cranky, and I am not fun to be around.
No, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. It's just there, and it's a habit almost.
Yes.
And you've just kind of got to do it. So how do you do your research then? If there are things that you want to be looking for specifically, how do you do your research? For me, I'll just Google it.
For sure.
Just keep
Google's your friend. I spend a lot of time watching and listening to YouTube videos.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I have subscribed to, I can't tell you how many newsletters so I keep an eye on the space industry, all the science coming out of laboratories, all the new discoveries. There's these science digests that come every day, and I don't read them every day because they're so intense, but there's just headlines that jump to articles about new discoveries in all areas of science. And so I was pre-med until I was 19 when I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. So I was deeply interested in science and really ate it up and thought I would go study microbiology. and but I didn't. So, but it's a hobby of mine. And my husband's a high school science teacher, physics, and this year earth space science. So I can say, oh, did you hear about this cool thing they just discovered about blah 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 nanoparticles or blah blah
Yeah.
blah quasars or oh my gosh, this they discovered a galaxy without stars. What?
What?
How did they
Yeah.
do that? Yeah. So I'm like other people might read the newspaper. I'm reading and listening about science, and I pay attention to the space industry, the launches, and the this and the Artemis program, and
Wow.
James Webb Space Telescope. And it's like I don't read fashion magazines. I pay attention to what's going on in science
Yeah,
in all
that's
areas. Yeah.
absolutely amazing. That's really, I suppose I'm quite fortunate in as much that my business partner JP is a physicist, lives in Switzerland. So if I have an idea, we were kicking around the idea of how you would communicate over light years instantly. And I can't even remember what it's called now, but there's something with particles. When one particle's up here, it's up there as well. So you have this instant communication. I can't, what is it called? Quantum something or other, but it just
Spooky, I think. Yeah, spooky action at a distance.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
all stuff like that. So I have this idea of what I want to put in the story, and I'll run it by him and I go, actually, did you know that they've just done this? And I was like,
Yeah.
no. Okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yesterday, okay, I was watching a YouTube video like you,
Mhm.
and there was this new computer thing come out. It's called the Rabbit R1. Have you seen it?
No,
You've
wait,
not.
yes.
It's
My husband sent me the video on it, yes, but I haven't watched it. Yeah, he was telling me about it.
Yeah, AI
Yeah.
based,
Uh-huh.
just amazing piece of kit. I mean, it's not based on apps like the mobile phones, like your Android or your Apple phone. It's
Yes.
based on natural speak. So it's got a push to
Yeah.
talk button, and you talk to it, and
Yeah.
it speaks back, and it can do things. So rather than like ChatGPT, for example, can pretty much just answer questions for you,
Hmm.
and give you information. This thing can actually do things for you. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't spoil it for you because you're going to have a
Yeah.
look at the video and watch the demonstration. And so I get, but that sort of stuff fascinates me because I think, this is the future that we're looking at here right now.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of looking for those sorts of things as well, to put them into the books to make them feel not sort of futuristic, but grounded in some kind of almost reality, if you like.
Exactly. Oh,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And I also talk to people about my ideas,
Mhm.
and because Janie travels around to different space stations, and each space station is different. And I want to do some outlandish things and explore different social systems, government systems, the way people sustain themselves, what they value, their value systems. And so I'll run ideas by people, almost trying to, again, experiment and hear how they sound, and what if this and what if that. And I'm still doing that with book 5. I'm still trying to nail down some of the world building aspects that
Yeah.
will color my Janie's experience. And I'm not 100% happy. That's how I know, like, it's not quite right. And I start doing more research and talking to people. And I rope in my siblings. I have 4 younger siblings, and I'll run ideas by them because, like in the previous books, one of my brothers is a pharmacist. So I had him vet some of the scenes. I would send him some of the scenes and just ask him, does this sound real enough? Does it
Yeah.
sound, and he made little tiny adjustments, and it was so fun. I have another brother who is into farming, and I have some plant questions for him. And he's noodling around those ideas with me and giving me some resources. It's just so fun. I have another friend who's a cook, and runs a restaurant. And I've run cooking ideas. Actually, that was one of my romances, called A Cupcake Christmas.
Yeah.
And it was so fun to talk to her about recipes and, does this sound plausible? That kind of thing.
Fantastic. Well, look, okay, so let's talk
Yeah.
about your books. Let's talk about Janie McAllister. I think she's been described as a tough heroine with secrets. So
Yes.
it's like, okay, right. So now I'm intrigued. So talk to us a little bit about the Janie McAllister series that you've got out. It's a sci-fi mystery.
Yes. Yeah. So think CSI in space. They're police procedurals. They're kind of nerdy, kind of techie, but also running around catching the bad guys.
Yeah.
And she has an a little bit of a chip on her shoulder at the beginning of Into the Black, the first book in the series. And she's a new lead investigator on the team, and she has to win the trust of her team. And she has an interesting, diverse background, and she's in this very opulent space station hotel casino.
Okay,
So
yeah.
got it. Yeah, big casino floor.
Isn't it?
What's that?
Does it
Yeah,
have
French name.
yeah.
Yeah, I made up a name. I speak French, by the way, but I
Okay.
purposely made up a name that
Yeah.
did not exist and that doesn't make logical sense in French, but that's okay. It's technically, I mean, I wanted to translate roughly to Jewel of the Stars
Okay.
because it's like it's bijou. Bijou means jewel, l'étoile, bijou de l'étoile. It is the like highest, ritziest, most expensive, most high-tech space station
Fantastic.
in high Earth orbit. And it's got a space elevator for staff because it takes like a week to get up there.
Wow.
And then, but the high rollers, they just jet in with their space jet that took them like 90 minutes from the planet, from Earth. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And it's set about a little over 100 years from now, and in a world that looks similar but different than ours. And Janie is a bit from the wrong side of the tracks, but she also has she went to university in a town where all her needs were met, like universal basic income, which I set that in San Francisco. And she's originally from Las Cruces, New Mexico. And she is there the story opens, she was going after a thief, but caught the wrong person twice. And now from on high, she's been told, if you mess up a third time, you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. And this is not just any old job for her. She's basically supporting her mother who's sick, and they need to pay for experimental treatment. And so now Janie is feeling she wants to make sure her mother gets the best treatment. So it has a very strong emotional reason why she's gotta get it right this time.
Yeah.
And the story ensues. I really don't want to spoil it for anyone.
No, don't.
Yeah, it's fast paced. It's people really have enjoyed it. It finaled in a contest, which was so awesome. Yeah. And then she just keeps going, book 2, book 3, book 4 are all out. And book 5 I'm working on, and it's going to be coming out later this year.
Fantastic. So can they be read as standalone books, or are you
yes,
even so they are standalone? Okay,
they are standalone, but they are in sequence, and there is a quartet happening. There is a through line. There is things that happen that come back around, so you do get a lot of benefit reading them in order. But people have told me they've picked up one or the other and they still enjoyed it. But like mini series, you get the maximum enjoyment when you read in order. Although if you read out of order, you're still going to be able to put the pieces together. Yeah,
I think that's important, isn't it? You do that. You can pick up book 5 and then go back to book 1 and think, oh yeah, there's similarities, or at least traits of the same person, the same sort of characteristics. So it's important to do that. That's great. It's nice to be able to just sort of pick them up at random and not be forced into going from book 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think because I think sometimes, I don't know about you, but I think that from people that I've spoken to, readers particularly, that sometimes if they're going to get a book off of Amazon or something like that, and they'll see it's book 1 of 5, it actually puts them off from I think they think, oh no, so I've got to read 1 and I can't get to book, it's too much, so they move on. And you know what Amazon's like, there's so many books out there that just choose on something else. But no, it's great that they can be standalone. That's
absolutely
fantastic. Yeah, it works really well. I think it's better if it does that. So you've got, because I've got it written here and you can't see it, but Into the Black, Lured by Light, Gone Green, and Red Running Deep. That's the Janie McAllister series.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Now, on the covers, there is an image of Janie. Was that something that you designed, or did you get a cover design? Did you give a cover design a description of who Janie is and what she looks like? Or, where did she come from?
It was such a circuitous process. I worked with a cover designer who helped me come up with the concept. And actually, I think we found the model. And there's a series of pictures, and there's even more because we have a few more. And so the same model in these different poses. And we came up with a cover and a concept that I really liked. And but then this designer, she was not able to bring it to the polish that I wanted. So I had another designer
Okay.
who worked with me to finesse it and just did a beautiful job.
Yeah.
I cite her in the book. She's just fabulous, Nada Orlick, and she really brought everything out and helped me figure out what would be the best kind of background image, and and really helped me with that and guided me. And so, and then I had to work how she looks here into the story. So
Yeah.
there's some reference to it. Specifically, I think in book one. After that, I stopped, but I still could, I'll have to slip that into book five somehow.
Yeah.
And I came up with the titles with the help of, actually, that first designer helped me with the titles, and lots of feedback from people as well. And then I workshop them with my readers.
Wow. Okay.
I'd have multiple versions of a cover with a little bit different, with things going on with the colors. And then I would email my list and have them go to a web page and pick for me. And because after a while, I am unable to know which one is better and all that. And it's a fun thing to do with readers. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a good idea. I'm going to write that down.
Write that down. Yes. Readers love to jump in with their opinion, and I try and find ways to engage with them in a way that won't disrupt my own creative process. So getting input on covers was one of the ways I've done that.
That's a really cool idea. That's really good. And again, you're almost then ensuring that your cover is going to be attractive to people who look at it, because getting buyers to say, I really like that. That's really good. Fantastic. Okay. So that's Janie McAllister then. So talk about Henrietta then, because I when I looked at the covers of Henrietta, she has a similar sort of vibe to Janie. She's a strong kind of she's a warrior, obviously, but talk to us a little bit about that, because that's a young adult fantasy series. Is that right?
Yes. So that, oh my goodness, I don't know where to begin. Henrietta evolved first, and then the Janie series came. So Henrietta is very near and dear to my heart, and actually started as a very, very short story. It must have been 2 or 3 pages handwritten that I wrote when I was 20.
Okay.
So that was a long time ago. And so she had been brewing in me for quite some time. And when I finally was ready and able to sit down and write a novel that it was actually the 3rd novel I ever wrote, was Henrietta The Dragon Slayer.
Right.
And it really harkened back to my childhood of fairy tales and stories like, I don't know if people know, but there's a whole host of stories about Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack the Giant Killer, Jack and the 7 Giants. There's all these stories, and I read them all when I was a child. But I also was frustrated that none of them were girls. Why is it that Jack gets to go off and have these adventures? And I'm like, yeah, but what about me? I want to go off and have adventures. Yeah. So Henrietta grew out of that. And when I sat down to write the adventure story, it just really just grew out of that desire to go and have adventures. And I worked really hard to make sure that she's very grounded, she's very physical, and I loved making that really come through in the stories. And then I didn't realize that it was actually a reviewer who told me for book 1. They said Henrietta the Dragon Slayer is a story about friendship and how friends are more important than you'll ever know. And I didn't realize I was writing a story about friendship until a reader told me.
That's amazing, because I don't know if you know, that's slightly off kilter a little bit, but there's been an interview with Rocky Sylvester Stallone about Rocky, and he was saying it's not a boxing movie, it's a love story. But when you think about it, it really is. It's the boxing is almost secondary. It is the story of him getting the girl, if you like, really. So that's amazing. And that was something that you discovered almost accidentally. You hadn't purposely written it like that. You just
That's right.
Stuff. Wow. So it's something that when you get a reader, they have you've written a basic description of a character. And a reader will just fill in the blanks, and then you ask them to describe it, and it's totally different to what's in your mind. So you kind of find the way that people's minds work in terms of what's different to what you thought it was. So I find that
Sure.
absolutely fascinating, and that's again
Yeah.
one of the beautiful things about writing is that it allows people their own creativity, their own flow, which is really good.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And when finished book one and was editing it, I realized I had the story wasn't finished. It was like, duh. It didn't occur to me until I was in the final phase, like, oh
Ah,
yeah, of course. Of course now there has to be a book two. And I had already always had an image of this great battle. And so that became the focus and the finale of book three. And that
right.
image had driven me for a very long time. And really, in book two, she learns how to bring in a softer side, because she's this warrior, and then book two, she has to act as a diplomat.
Yeah.
Um, and then she also has to learn how to handle magic, which she was afraid of. So it's really about a young woman learning how to manage her power and to have more skills at that. And then in
Yeah.
book three, she's basically thrown into a new territory, again, stretched beyond her capabilities, and has to lead an army at the end and deal with the biggest force of evil in the world, but also, whoops, um, bring her friends together
Yeah.
and act in a way that really puts everything that she cares about on the line, like and be a leader.
Okay.
And that arc took me 13 years to write, just so to give some perspective. Like, I really felt strongly how much working on this book the series was about my own growth as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
A-
Yeah.
and that I had to mature in ways to be able to write those stories, and that's the way it is. I
Did you
think.
think that the story was too big for you then when you were younger? You needed some more life experience.
uh Well, certainly when I started at 20 years old, for
Yeah.
absolutely sure. And then when I had this ambitious idea for books two and three, I was telling my great aunt, who was always listening to us and a big supporter of our stories, my husband and I, he's a writer as well. And she said to me, "That's really ambitious, Beth." And I'm like, I know, but it did take me probably 3 or 4 years to be able to write both of those stories, because uh, some kind of growth needed to happen,
Sure.
and looking backwards, I can't quite say exactly what happened in the real world to allow me to write these books, but I remember feeling it. I
Yeah.
remember feeling like, I need to do this thing, but it still feels a bit in front of me and not really with me right here.
Yeah. So would you say then that those books are geared at somebody who's a little bit older, maybe in their sort of mid to late 20s, to kind of get a grasp of what you're talking about, or are they still capable, or someone who's 18 will still grasp what you're talking about? Do you need an age group, or are you just that there's a
Uh,
story? That's a throw.
yeah.
That's throwing you a curveball, isn't it?
Well, no, I had to think about it with book one, and I did gear it to ages 12 and up.
Okay.
Uh, and I remember when I was a teenager, I was always reading stories about young people going off being independent.
Mhm.
So I think when you're in that age of being a teenager, 14, 15, 16, you're interested in thinking about that part of your life. What is it going to be like when I have to be independent and I have to make my
Yeah.
own decisions?
Yeah.
So it's still geared to teens, and I'm still, and even in this continuing stories for the TV series, it now everyone is about a year older. So it's still for young people who are like, now what? Okay, now how do I do this? And how do I make independent decisions? And what do I really want? So I am still talking to that young, independent part of people. And I would say that most of my readership, though, are middle-aged women. I mean, who are
Yeah.
searching still for their own, you know, we're always, I think, looking for freedom and looking for how to step into our strength and as leaders, as
Yeah.
independent thinkers, and they're books that weren't available when I was a teen. We didn't have enough of strong young women. They were starting to come out, but this would have been the early 80s.
Mhm.
They weren't quite there yet. So there's a lot of people who aren't reading today's contemporary YA necessarily, or maybe they are, and they want that adventure. I still read stories about that age group.
Sure, yeah, yeah. So, which do you find easier to write then, young adult or sci-fi, or of course romance, which we'll talk about in a moment?
Okay.
Which do you find easier to write?
I would say the Henrietta material is generally easier, but
Okay.
not for the age group. It's because she's so earthy and so grounded and so connected to Earth. You know, writing Janie is very challenging in many ways because most of the stories she's not in these four stories, she's on a space station.
Right.
And in book five that I'm finishing, she's a little bit on the planet Earth, but mostly again in a space station or flying from here to there. And it's like, okay, this is a whole other challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And writing mysteries is quite challenging. I love it, but it is hard because of
Yeah.
all the puzzle pieces that you're doing. And yeah, I
Fantastic.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. So the romance that you write then, because we'll talk about that now as well, is
Mhm.
that a similar sort of age group then, sort of late teens, early 20s, or is it still for younger teens? Can they still read it as well?
It is
It's not too spicy.
it's not spicy at all, actually. It's called Sweet Romance, and I purposely wrote it that way because I wasn't really interested in writing the sexy bits, and I really wanted to just write a story of falling in love and intimacy in the emotional level.
Yeah.
So it is actually teens can read it, and it's totally safe for teens. Now, the next stuff I'm going to write is not. It's definitely
Okay.
for just for adults, but the five stories that are out, they're short romances, they're novellas. Yeah, they're all for teens and up. Yeah.
How long does it take you to write one of those then? So if it's a short story, is what, 25,000 words, something like that?
It's actually novella. Yeah, I wrote, gosh, it's been a long time, but I wrote and published those five stories in the span of, I think, a year. So it
Wow.
wasn't, they're very short compared to novels for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Sure.
I'm very much a novel writer. I don't come from a background of like writing lots of short stories. Uh, geez, 25, like they started out as 20,000 words and then they would get longer with editing. Uh, uh, I can't remember. I mean, I don't kill myself over writing first drafts.
Yeah.
So I might be writing 1 to 2,000 words a day, but it varies. Some days it's 500 words. So I probably did each of those books over the span of 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. I
Okay.
mean, if you do the math, if I was writing 2,000 words a day, that's 10 days, right? So I
Yeah.
could technically write one in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Uh, but I write fast and I edit slow.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm going to ask you about your writing process in a moment, but
Yeah.
so your romance series that you've got now, are they have you got the same characters running through each of the stories?
They're connected. They're all connected. They're friends. So each story has a different couple. It's very typical in a romance series. So each story has a different couple, and they're all connected in various ways.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
some were like fraternity brothers. Some were like I have two that are Christmas elves. They're brother and sister. So the protagonists in two different stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they're interconnected, and it's all three of them take place in the San Francisco Bay Area, and two take place in France. Or is it three? I think I have the other way around. Two take place in the San Francisco Bay Area, and three take place in France. Because I lived in France several times, and so I had to bring in my love of Paris and other parts of France. So
Fantastic. So did you write, was the romance series first? Did that come before the young adult stuff and the science fiction, or which came first? The chicken.
sure, chicken or the egg. It's sandwiched in between. So first the YA fantasy, then the romance, and then the sci-fi
Wow.
mysteries.
So
Yeah,
you said you write between 1 and 2,000 words a day when you're sort of sitting there and into the writing groove, if you like. So do you
yeah.
have a specific writing routine? I mean, for me, before we started recording, I said to you that um, I generally don't start much before sort of 10 a.m. if I'm sort of in the rewrite editing phase. But if I'm in the writing phase, if I'm writing a draft, then I'm an early riser. I get up early and I will get straight into it. I kind of edit what I've written yesterday and then write some more
Mhm.
and sort of circle back that way. What's your
Yeah.
process?
Yeah. So I love to write, and this is, I'm probably in the minority, but I love to write after lunch. That's my ideal time. And lunch can start as early as 11:30 and then, have a bite to eat and then right? Or sometimes I'll have a late breakfast because I've gotten up late. And then I love to walk to a cafe nearby. I live near lots of cafes. That's about a 10-minute walk, sit down, work for about an hour, hour and a half, and then come home and work on the business because I run my own business.
Right, sure.
So, so the writing gets sandwiched in between because sometimes business will happen in the morning, emails or whatever, podcast interviews.
Yeah.
And then I need to get up and move. And that's a big part of my writing is movement, is walking.
Yeah.
And then sit down and work. And even when I'm in the editing phase, I try and keep that routine.
Okay.
Sometimes in deadline, I don't have a deadline for this current book, but when I'm getting toward the end, I'll start editing the book into the evening, which I don't normally do. But when it's feels like, oh, I'm almost there, then I want to just keep going and I want to get it done.
So are you then disciplined enough to so for example, I've used a Pomodoro timer before where it counts down to 20 minutes, then I've got to get up and go and do something for 10 and come back, which never works out. I just switch it off and carry on in most cases. And all of a sudden 4 hours has gone and I haven't moved and I can't feel my feet anymore. So it's kind of, it gets, do you find that, or are you disciplined enough to, right, no, I've got to stop now and then go and do something else and walk? How do you do that?
I often set a timer, and I should say part of my writing process most of the time now is I keep a little log or journal.
Okay.
So I actually I use Scrivener for all my story notes and my world building notes, and wrote my first draft in that. And I'll open that up and I'll just put the date and the location, and I'll just talk to myself. Oh, hi Beth, how's it going? What's going on? Oh, I don't want to do it. Oh, yeah, but I am curious about this. And I'll like walk myself into the story a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very specific and I'm working out issues, and sometimes it's just, let's get to it. And then I use Toggle, I think it's called Toggle, to track all my time.
Okay.
So I'll turning that on also signals for me it's time to work.
Isn't that in Scrivener? Is that part of Scrivener? No,
it's a separate, it's a separate app.
Okay.
That I use.
Okay.
And then I put on a headset to listen to my long playlist of like Star Trek and Star Wars and The Mandalorian and all this soundtrack from all these things. And that really helps me get in the mood. And then if I'm feeling a little bit cranky, I might set a timer for like 20 minutes to help me focus. Or I usually have other things I need to do. So I just like, now's the time. I have an hour. Now's the time. So I just kind of talk myself into it. And then my body often will tell me, I got to get up. I got to move, know. And so I've worked an hour and 10 minutes, and I got to go. I got to go to the next thing. I got to walk back up the hill to the apartment to sit down and have the other more appointments or client talks or whatever, get things done.
Yeah. So when you're writing, do you leave it on a sentence or a new idea so that when you sit down in front of the screen again and switch it on, you're kind of instantly back into the flow of it because almost where you've left off and where you've got to go? Do you do that?
Well, I plan out my story using my own planning methodology. I have a book for that, because I'm a writing teacher. And so when I'm working on the first draft, I kind of know where I'm going.
Okay.
And so the breadcrumbs, I can't remember. It's been a while since I worked on a first draft, but the breadcrumbs are there. So I know because of the plan kind of what's next. And I keep a running log, a journal. So I also kind of have a way, that's usually my way in. I don't always stop on a sentence. I'm not that strategic. But I try and leave it with an emotional feeling of like, this is where we got to and this is where we're going to. So little notes for myself. And if I forget or there's a gap of a few days, because I don't write every day when I'm writing, at about 4 to 6 days a week, then I have my outline and I have my notes, and I often, like you, I will reread the previous day's work, just correct typos, nothing big. I don't allow myself to get all critical. I'm just like, it is what it is. Let's just correct some things that jump out at me and then move on. So that also is the way to come back in, is to reread the work and then just keep going.
Yeah, fantastic. So you said you're not writing many or a first draft at the moment, is that right? You've not got a first draft kind of on the go. So you're editing and rewriting and prepping for launches. a lot of people are sort of recording audiobooks now. Is that something that you are planning on doing for your series? Or
Well, I actually have an audiobook publisher, and
okay. Oh, wow.
I've been waiting.
Yeah.
It's been in the works for a few years. So listeners, if you want my audiobooks, let me know so I can let the publisher know,
Yeah.
so I can encourage her. But I do know a lot of people would love
Yeah.
audiobooks, and
Yeah.
so we're waiting on that. And yeah, Janie, the first book, Into the Black, is in the works. So again, if folks want that in audio, let me know. And yeah, so because I'm also a podcaster, I'm probably going to record my nonfiction myself now
Okay.
that I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
ease and I know how to use the editing and tools and everything. But yeah, for fiction, I'm looking forward to that day when I can be able to tell readers, hey, the audiobooks are ready.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Because I mean, a lot of the people that I've spoken to, I say a lot of people I've spoken to, some of the people I've spoken to have got audiobooks out or they're in the process of doing them. And
Yeah.
I've listened to a few of them and I always ask about, so how do you find the characters when they're being narrated? Are they how you expect them to be? How does that work? So, the audiobooks are fascinating, and they're also something that I think a lot of people will really enjoy because you can listen to it in the car and all of that sort of stuff, can't you?
Yeah.
So it gives you another medium to work with. And talking of which, a little bird tells me that you're into filmmaking as well.
Yes, yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Are you?
Okay.
Is it your Janie McAllister series that you're turning into a series, or how? What? So tell me
Okay.
what's
All
happening.
right.
How you doing?
So it's been a dream of mine for almost 2 decades to turn Henrietta the Dragon Slayer
Right.
into a film.
Yeah.
But we're not doing an adaptation. We're actually doing continuing adventures. So
Okay.
after book 3, now what? Henrietta and her friends are all together, and I have given them a bunch of adventures. And I've written a TV pilot, and we are filming the teaser. We are filming the opening of the TV show as
Yeah.
its own little standalone separate short film, because this is my first foray into filmmaking.
Wow.
And while I have a crew, we'll be going for funding, and it's fabulous. I'm very excited. I'm the producer, director, and writer.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, and I'm very excited. I have this team of filmmakers who have already made, each of them have worked in film and have done film school and work in a film camp where I've been volunteering for the last 7, 8 years. And we're coming together out of joy and love of this. It's truly an independent film. I just wrote a few new pages. I was asked, oh, my crew gave me feedback, so I wrote some more.
Yeah.
Pretty soon I'll get some more feedback, and once that's done, we'll do auditions.
Wow.
We have someone working on props because we have a monster, of course, so we're going to do some fun things with that. We're scouting locations. I've been gathering ideas for music. It's going to be live action with 2 actors. So yeah, the whole shebang. It's very
Wow,
exciting.
that is so full on. Wow.
Yeah.
That'll be fantastic. I shall really look forward to doing that. So yeah, fantastic. Please let me know when you've got progress done on that. Something that we can look at. That'd be brilliant to do.
Great.
All right. So what's next for you then? You've now you said you're writing book 5 in the series.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's another Janie McAllister, is it?
Another Janie McAllister book.
Okay.
Book 5 due out hopefully at the end of 2024, toward the
Okay.
end.
Yeah.
And it is a much bigger book than the first 4. It's kind of a break a little bit. It's something new. There's a time gap between books 4 and 5. And she is off to a faraway space station and encountering to uncover a secret about her grandmother. And in the course of that, people die, and she is the only one who's qualified enough to investigate at the first location. And then she starts getting called into these other space stations because of similarities with that first death. And then she becomes hunted, and lots of things happen to really ratchet up the stakes. I mean, her life, and people that she cares about, their lives are in the center of the bullseye there, and somehow she prevails. Will she prevail? And she's in who knows? She's in a big transition in her life. And so this is a big book. These are all about 70,000 words. And this one is over 100,000 words.
Yeah, yeah, mine are as well. Once I start, I just can't seem to stop. It just goes on and on. Wow.
It's a lot. So it's
Oh, that
three
sounds great.
murders,
Yeah,
3 different locations. The story spans 5 different locations. And for the first time, I'm bringing in other perspectives, other points of view, to really ratchet up the stakes. And Janie's in a big transition time. So we'll
yeah.
see where she ends up.
And it sounds like there could be more after that as well, potentially.
Yes, I am definitely daydreaming more adventures for her and her friends, more murder mysteries on more space stations. Yes,
Fantastic. So where can people buy the books then? Are they everywhere?
everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, Apple, everywhere. Yeah, Smashwords. I believe in being wide and being available to
Yeah,
all territories
yeah.
and not having any exclusives. And there's even a place people can buy books from me. I'm slowly building up my own little storefront, and Into the Black is there, and I believe Henrietta The Dragon Slayer is there as well.
There's a
And
lot
more
of
will be
people
coming.
doing that. There's a lot
Yeah,
of people thinking about doing
yeah,
that. I think that's a great idea. Take that
yeah,
exclusivity away from Amazon, dare I say it. And
yeah,
yeah, I think that's a great
for sure.
idea.
Yeah.
Well, listen, so I'm going to there'll be links to your website and all of your social media and any of the other links that you want there on there as well, somewhere on around here, up there, down there on the video. And so this will
Mhm.
be on Spotify and all that sort of stuff as well.
Beautiful.
So people can make contact with you, but also buy your
Yeah.
books as well, which
Oh, thank you,
absolutely they
Paul.
should.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being on today. It's been a great fun. I've really enjoyed talking to you and finding out more about what you've been doing. And I know you do so much, so we will talk more.
Thank
And
you.
I think I would certainly like to have you back on
Okay.
when book 5 comes out, if you would like
Oh,
to.
yes.
And certainly we'll talk more about
Oh,
your filmmaking, because that's
thank you.
fascinating to me. Would you be okay to do that?
Oh, I would love that, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun to talk shop, talk story. I
Yeah,
love it. It's my favorite thing to do. So
great.
thank you.
Thanks, Beth. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll speak again
Thank you,
soon.
Paul. Sounds
Thanks.
great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another captivating episode of the Page Turnerz Podcast. We hope you enjoyed delving into the pages with us, discovering new stories, and revisiting beloved classics. If you're as passionate about books as we are, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback keeps us bringing you fascinating discussions, author interviews, and book recommendations. Remember, the adventure never ends when you have a book in hand. Until next time, keep turning those pages and let the magic of storytelling continue to inspire your imagination. Happy reading.